Hello, everybody. I love this bustling. This is wonderful. Hi, and welcome. My name is Isaac Poole. I am an assistant educator here in public programs at the Met. I am delighted to welcome you to tonight's program, Casa Susanna, a conversation with Diana Merry-Shapiro and Torrey Peters. A few words about the exhibition. Casa Susanna is organized by the Art Gallery of Ontario and Le Rond Cordal in collaboration with the Metropolitan Museum of Art. The exhibition is made possible by the Robert Mapplethorpe Foundation, Incorporated. Casa Susanna brings together photographs and publications created by and for a community of cross-dressers who met regularly in New York City and the Catskill Mountains throughout the 1960s. Casa Susanna offers insights into a significant pre-Stonewall cross-dressing scene, inviting visitors to understand this world and its connection to the lives of transgender people today. Mia Fineman, curator in the Department of Photographs here at the Met, curated the Met's presentation of Casa Susanna, and tonight's program will begin with her providing an overview of the exhibition in just a few moments. Then she's going to be joined by Diana Merry-Shapiro and Torrey Peters for a conversation about the importance of archiving community and the evolution of gender expression across generations. You're going to hear firsthand stories about life at Casa Susanna and experiences that inform the writing of Torrey Peters as well. I'm pleased to share a bit more about Torrey and Diana. Torrey Peters is the author of the best-selling novel Detransition, Baby, which won the 2021 PEN/Hemingway Award for Debut Fiction, was named a Best Book of the Century by the New York Times, was a finalist for the 2021 National Book Club Critics Circle Award for the John Leonard Prize, and longlisted for the Women's Prize. And Stag Dance, which just came out this year, is another book. Peters holds an MFA from the University of Iowa and a master's in comparative literature from Dartmouth. She splits her time between Brooklyn and an off-grid cabin in Vermont. Diana Merry-Shapiro was born into an Iowa farming family in 1939. As a student, she discovered the Transvestia Network and subsequently New York's Casa Susanna. There she met Gloria, a well-known benefactress of the Casa Susanna community, who soon funded a trip to Tijuana, Mexico for Diana's gender affirmation surgery. She then embarked on a brilliant career as a computer programmer at the Xerox Corporation's Palo Alto Research Center. As one of the original co-inventors of the Smalltalk programming language, she helped write the first system for overlapping display windows. Today, Diana lives with Carol, her wife of 30 years, just across the river in New Jersey. Diana's memories and insights bring to life not only the risks and secrecy of this era, meaning the Casa Susanna era, but also the resilience and creativity that sustain people who dare to live authentically, even in private. It's now my pleasure to introduce the moderator of this panel and the co-curator of Casa Susanna, Mia Fineman, curator in the Department of Photographs here at the Met. Welcome, Mia.
Thank you. Thank you, Isaac. We're gonna. Oh, good. Okay. And thank you all for coming to the museum on a Friday night. I know there are a lot of other places to be in New York, but this is. We're happy to have you here. I would also like to thank my two brilliant colleagues, the French photo historian Isabelle Bonnet and the Canadian curator Sophie Hackett, who originated the exhibition Casa Susanna, which was first presented in southern France at Les Rencontres d'Arles Photo Festival in 2023, and then at the Art Gallery of Ontario in Toronto. We're very happy to be presenting the show here at the Met, especially because it's a very New York story. The exhibition brings together photographs and magazines that were created by and for a community of cross-dressers here in New York and in the Catskills. These the photographs. Here's our exhibition. Photographs first came to light in 2004 when two antique dealers found a trove of some 400 snapshots at a flea market in Chelsea. It was the 26th Street flea market, for any of you who are interested. And another individual also found another trove of these same pictures, and that was Cindy Sherman, the contemporary artist. So the photographs, and it's so fascinating that like she just came across these, and she is actually one of the lenders to the exhibition, along with the Art Gallery of Ontario and Betsy Wollheim, who's the daughter of one of the members of the Casa Susanna circle. So further research after these pictures were first published in a book in 2004 by these dealers revealed that the snapshots belonged to Susana Valenti, who was born Tito Arriagada in Santiago, Chile. And Tito had been cross-dressing in secret since early adolescence. But his life changed when he walked into a wig shop on Fifth Avenue in the early 1950s and met the shop's owner, Marie Tornell. This is the two of them, the sort of couple who was behind a lot of what we'll be seeing and talking about. Marie ran this wig shop. She was an Italian immigrant, successful businesswoman, very independent for her time. And Tito walked in and said, "Hi, I'm looking for a wig for my sister." Marie, looked at him and said, "I think this is for you, and let me find you something that's going to work and make you look beautiful." It was sort of love at first sight. The two of them fell in love, married, and together created Tito's femme identity, Susanna. Susanna and Marie hosted frequent gatherings of cross-dressing friends at their apartment on West End Avenue and 103rd Street. In 1960, they began hosting gatherings at a bungalow colony that Marie owned in the Catskills near Hunter Mountain. Eventually, they sold that property and bought a somewhat smaller house property, large house, but which they called Chevalier d'Eon, just nearby. And all of these places provided a respite, a retreat, safe spaces for cross-dressers to gather during an era of intense persecution of queer and gender non-conforming people. It was the McCarthy years, and it was a difficult, difficult time to be out in any sense. Most of the cross-dressers in the circle, lived in isolation, many in shame. And most of them led double lives as married men with families and established careers who practiced cross-dressing mostly behind closed doors. Just want to make a note on language. In their day, members of the Casa Susanna community called themselves transvestites or TVs. And today that word is considered pejorative. In the exhibition, we use the preferred term cross-dressing to describe the practice of wearing clothing typically associated with a different gender than that which one presents day to day. And we'll be talking a little bit about language and the changes in language a little later tonight. Photographs and photography played an incredibly important role in this community. They used the camera to create and affirm their femme identities. They exchanged photographs when they got together. They sent them to each other by mail. Most of the members had collections of pictures of themselves and pictures of their circle of friends. Of course, this was a risk during this era, and it just sort of shows how important photography was to them in seeing an externalized image of themselves, the way that they felt inside, the way that they wished to be seen, was an incredibly powerful and affirming thing. Here you see a picture of kind of a playful paparazzi scene set up, and they're holding Polaroid cameras. The Polaroid was first introduced in the late 50s, and it was especially popular among cross-dressers, both for the instant results and also for the privacy it afforded. Meant that you didn't have to take your film to a commercial photo lab where you risked exposure, and exposure could lead to many terrible outcomes. The exhibition also includes issues of Transvestia, an underground magazine that published many of the photographs along with autobiographical essays by readers, makeup and clothing advice, fiction, poetry, medical articles. And it had this beautiful, amazing graphic design. Transvestia was published out of Los Angeles, and it functioned as a lifeline for many in this circle, and also as a social network that allowed cross-dressers across the country to connect with one another, to exchange letters and photographs, and eventually to meet. Susanna advertised Casa Susanna, the resort, in the very first issues of the magazine. She was involved as an editor and also as a columnist. She wrote a regular column called Susanna Says that was really expressed her sort of playful personality. There was a lot of gossip and news and advice about cross-dressing in general. So this is Susanna and Marie's apartment. The walls were painted pink, and you'll see if you go up to the exhibition that was an inspiration for our designers. And we have a very, very pink walls in a beautiful shade of Benjamin Moore called Ballet Slipper, which is period appropriate. So they also had shiny curtains, gold curtains covering the windows, a big floor-to-ceiling mirror that they often posed in front of. It was just, a nice, spacious place, kind of like a classic six on West End Avenue. Chevalier d'Eon, their first resort, was named after a famous cross-dressing spy in 18th century France. They were looking back at history for predecessors, for ancestors. This property consisted of a main house, several bungalows, and a converted barn where they would stage talent shows and cabarets that were actually open to the local community. So here are a few pictures from inside the house, and you see the front door, and this is from the theater where they had performances. When that property became too expensive to run, Susanna and Marie sold it and purchased a house a few miles away, which they called Casa Susanna. There was a lake nearby where they could go swimming, and you see these just joyful shots of Lily posing in a bathing suit and white go-go boots on a diving board. And Susanna and some friends just being outside together was a really special thing. What drew visitors to the resort was this chance to live freely and safely en femme for a few days, and to liberate what Susanna referred to as the girl within. It seems like a lot of what they did was put on outfits and take pictures of each other. There are many, many pictures. There's a lot of joy, which is sort of was not the way that they often, experience the world out, in their day-to-day lives. So the last section of this show focuses on how people in this community use the camera to create and express their femme identities and the feminine ideal that they aspired to, which was a very sort of white middle class, mid-century ideal of femininity. Very ladylike, kind of based in gender stereotypes of the 1940s and 50s. The girl next door, the happy housewife, the respectable matron. Their goal was to pass as a woman in appearance and gesture, and they very much did, at least in the pictures. And many of the pictures really draw on the conventions of fashion photography and family snapshots. This is a grouping that I call, honey, go over by the car, which is, usually you see many, in my own family snapshots, the wife posing by the car and the husband or dad is taking the picture. There's also honey, stand by the TV set. This is, remember, this is the 60s. Having a color TV was a status symbol and usually the centerpiece of the living room. And it was a place where you would take a picture to kind of show off your middle class, nice dress and nice TV. And of course, if you get a fur coat, then you're going to pose in that. In these pictures, you can see that at least the fur stole at the top. I think it's the same garment that they're passing among each other. Like, okay, now you wear it, and I'll take your picture. It's that kind of thing. I mean, it's really just like having fun with clothes and cameras. And in some cases, subjects would have themselves photographed in series, trying on different outfits, wigs, and accessories. So this is Kate. Her name is Kate Cummings. We know who she was. She wrote a memoir of her transition that was published in the 90s. She's really just playfully exploring the possibilities of femme selfhood, and you can see why Cindy Sherman would really like these pictures as well. So with those possibilities in mind, I'm thrilled to welcome our speakers for this evening, Diana Merry-Shapiro and Torrey Peters.
Hi. Thank you all.
Okay, is
My
everybody comfortable?
goodness, but we are a weird lot, aren't we?
So let's start at the beginning with you, Diana. What was your first encounter with Casa Susanna? What was it like walking into that space?
So this is kind of interesting because I only was ever at Casa Susanna one time. It looks like 64. Is that when you said the Casa Susanna actually
Yes,
started?
yeah.
So I believe it was that year, and it was an amazing experience for me. I had very little sort of public experience, and just the whole opportunity to sort of be expressed and get your hair done and all that kind of fun stuff was just, a breathtaking experience, almost otherworldly. I mean, it was just beyond what I imagined might be possible. And I got to know some people there, and I got to know the person who actually sponsored me for surgery. I met there, and I met a few other people who were in the New York universe, Tito's universe, basically. We we had a lot of fun when we were at Casa Susanna. It was just, we did ditties. I remember I did the Shape of Things song, completely round is a perfect pearl, the oyster manufacturers. But for me, it was a way into a potential for getting. It was really more for self-discovery. For up until pretty late in my, I was married at the time, and I kept thinking that it was going to go away. It was going to go away, and that was really the beginning of the time where I realized it probably wasn't going to go away, and I began to discover ways that I might be able to have a life as a female. Discover things like Harry Benjamin, who was where you got hormones at that time, and realized that I had to figure out a way to get back into the New York universe, because that was where Benjamin was, and that was where opportunities lay. But I had no idea that a couple of years later, this person that I had met at Casa Susanna would say, "I hear you want to do the surgery. Would you like? I'd be willing to help you out." And the rest is kind of history. I could go on, but that's enough.
That was Gloria, and
that was Gloria.
Did she do the surgery herself? Or
No,
she only sponsored.
No, Gloria
others?
was Rex Anderson was actually the founder of the Anderson Coach Company, a fairly famous mobile home business, and was kind of wealthy, not but wealthy enough to be able to sponsor surgeries. It was totally kind of unrealistic from a physical point of view. He had also had a stroke, and so that was a hard thing for him. But he was an amazing person, and while it kind of looks kind of suspicious, there was absolutely no ask for return. It was just an amazing gift that he gave me.
Wow. So a lot of the story of Casa Susanna is about community, and in your first novel, Detransition, Baby, there's a lot of people looking for a community, looking for a place where of belonging, and sometimes not finding it. Are there communities or books or spaces that first gave you a feeling of recognition or belonging?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me and for everything you're saying, because I find it very interesting that I was asked to do this event, because I've written two things, including Detransition, Baby, which is about trans community and things like that. But most of what I've written, I think, about cross-dressing is actually very ambivalent to critical of cross-dressing and sort of the cross-dressing communities that maybe are here. And I don't personally feel that I can speak to what people the kind of choices that people had to make in the 60s. But I came up in Chicago. I'm 44 years old. And sort of like the vestigial culture from Casa Susanna was still sort of active when I was growing up. So when I was looking for like, how am I going to express myself, there was a lot of kind of cross-dressing events that I could go to. There were stores where you could pay money to have people do makeovers for you. And a lot of my transition wasn't necessarily just transitioning in terms of, the typical transition story, but also transitioning away from this. in that for me, a lot of this looks like a coping mechanism, and it looks sad to me. Like this is like a little. I wasn't kind of quite expecting to say this, but I had an emotional reaction seeing these photos. In that, like for me, a lot of it was, the opening thing was, you get to live authentically in private. What does that mean? How does that make sense? And I'm not criticizing that as an opening thing, but as because that is what was happening, is that people sort of tell themselves that. And so for me, a lot of my transition was actually, and a lot of, like, you use the word middle class a lot. A lot of this to me was about maintaining middle class respectability. I'm middle class, I'm like educated. I also wanted to maintain my respectability. And so I went to cross-dressing events. My second book has a story set in Las Vegas, which is about a cross-dressing convention, which was sort of like the last one I ever went to, where basically, like, my actual community, what I didn't find it there, I would say, because there was a lot of people saying, like, listen, you don't have to do the thing that you have to do. You can come, you can dress up on Saturdays, that's enough. You can keep your job, you can keep your wife, you can keep everything you want. And all you have to do is just, get off with us on Sundays or whatever it is. And that to me looked like a coping mechanism. But I didn't know anything different. And it was only kind of when I met people who were transitioning in creating trans culture that I was like, this is my community, and this is actually, I think, a viable way to live that doesn't have a lot of compartmentalizing of yourself and sort of half-time, half measures. So, I didn't really plan to come out saying this, but, because I'm not trying to be like, but this is very, I'm an interesting person to have chosen, let's just say.
I profoundly agree with you that this was a coping mechanism, and that it was not. That's why I kind of ended up only being there one time. Yeah. My life has not been about being transgender. It's been mostly about. For most of my life, nobody knew that I was transgender, and I worked in computers. I worked at J.P. Morgan. I have done most of my life without that being the issue of my life. The whole phenomenon of Casa Susanna seems to me was kind of a desperate place. And I agree with Torrey very much that it is not where you want to be. It's where you want to be is just have your life. Anyway.
No, and it's like I have empathy for it. Like, the fact that, as you pointed out, these are all about photographs. I remember when I was 19, 20, and I took, I have a section in Detransition Baby. It's based on sort of my life and things I did. I took a bunch of my savings. I went to a store and I paid like $400, which I now know was a huge ripoff. Because that's the other thing, is that there was actually by the time that I was doing it, there was an economy of sort of ripping off desperate cross-dressers, where you could say, all right, listen, a makeover costs $150. A skirt that you get at TJ Maxx is $100 because you're actually too scared to go to TJ Maxx yourself. Terrifying place. It's like, and so like I went and I did that, and the whole thing sort of culminated in taking a picture of yourself. So you could say, hey, this is a potential of who I could be, and then you sat around and looked at a picture of what you once were and never were, and that was like your release valve. And so like when I see these pictures, I'm not just seeing these pictures, I'm seeing like the people who were in the pictures staring at themselves in these pictures, like longingly, sadly, and I see them as kind of like records of fear, because there were people, even in the 60s, who weren't doing it like this. And they had extremely difficult lives sort of outside I think it's a question of like, do you want to have a difficult life outside, or do you want to have like a difficult life internally and inside of yourself? And it's, kind of like, I see these pictures and it's like, I'm so scared that I go and I mean, I'm not trying to narrate against these three here, but like this looks to me like a document of fear. And so it's like, I have really a lot of mixed feelings about this. And I also, I think I lost 6 or 7 years to basically believing that like, okay, this could be enough. So it's, I see it as an indictment of myself also. Like, I'm not like just trying to criticize other people. I'm like, this is, I know that fear. And it's like strange now to be 20 years, how long period it is after this book came out, and have it be sort of like, oh, all trans culture is cool or whatever, and to have stuff celebrated. I'm like, I don't know, So, next question.
Well, the reason that we want to do here is because you have a point of view that is from a very different generation, and also a complex view of gender and sexuality that you're able to articulate so beautifully. That it's like, you're not here to say, yes, Casa Susanna was great, because it was a problematic time and and a moment in the history of trans identity. But I think that what we we want you here to be able to say those things, to be able to offer that perspective, that like this was a release valve. This was something that maybe we have moved beyond. In some ways, and that actually brings me to a question about language and identity. At this time, transgender didn't exist as a word, as an identity. And that was language and identity are so closely tied, and that's why I think language is so important in the queer community. I guess my question is about how does language affect your idea of identity and gender, and is it how important is it to you in terms of what do you call yourself, what do you call others, what do others call you?
Can I hear because I think you've seen like a longer.
I think the question is directed at you, but
well, I don't know. I think you've seen like,
Definitely for both of
you've
you.
seen a longer trajectory.
Torrey is giving an account of her writing as though it is other than what the transgender experience from my time was, and I would dispute that and say that your writing is very familiar. I think that a lot of the transgender community doesn't want to kind of be honest about that. That a lot of the experience, internal experience of a transgender life, is reflected in Torrey's writing, so I one of the things that maybe is worth addressing at this time is the notion of sexuality in the transgender experience. And there's a lot of sort of stuff going on now where it's kind of not, I don't know, what do you think? You're not supposed to have sexual feelings associated with this experience. And I think that's just kind of a false notion.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that like that's a sort of unspoken thing about like also, it's not necessarily unspoken by people here, but like, I look at these photos and like having actually been to events like this, I know that like everybody's probably hooking up. Everybody's probably a bit turned on, like that there's an element of sexuality to it. And, that kind of thing got I would say like very weaponized, right? Like if people don't know, the history of kind of trans medicine and trans psychology is that, and this is, I dispute this history, but it is the history of like the medical books, is basically there was a distinction made between kind of cross-dressers, transvestites, and what they called true transsexuals. And the difference being that true transsexuals, this is like coming out of Johns Hopkins University and things like that, saying that like true transsexuals played with dolls as kids. They always wanted to be a girl, and they were always attracted to men. These are true transsexuals. They're sort of women in men's bodies. And then there's another version, which was represented by sort of this kind of culture of what they called autogynephiles, which if you don't know that word, you can break it down. It means you're turned on by the idea of yourself as a woman. And so the depiction was that actually this is a type of fetishism. What's going on here is that people go and they dress up as women, and they're turned on by the fact that they are dressed up as women. This is actually like very operative in a lot of like, it's the underlying thing in a lot of like the J.K. Rowling type of transphobia and the Nancy Mace type of transphobia coming out of the feminist thing, where these aren't really women, these are fetishists who are like using women's bodies to get off. My point to that is basically like most women are turned on by being women. That's kind of like what's enjoyable about it, And so like, if anything, you would say this is actually confirms one's womanhood. But the thing is, like, I think that the sexuality kind of, that dichotomy was made, and it was sort of like these people are fetishists. And one of the things that was very painful about it, about me being involved in it, is that belief, not at this era because I hadn't come out as much in medicine, but by the time I knew it, that belief was believed by the cross-dressers. So the cross-dressers were actually like, we're just fetishists, which is a terrific coping mechanism. If you don't want to transition, if you don't want to fuck up your life by having to tell your wife, actually, I'm a woman and I'm going to do this thing and all this other stuff, it is a great out to say, this is just a fetish. I'll do it on Saturday nights, and that'll be it. And that was incredibly damaging to my generation, because if you had any sexuality as a trans woman, which most trans women do have sexuality, most women have sexuality again.
No shit, Sheila.
Yeah. You then said, oh, I'm not a woman. I enjoy this, therefore I'm a fetishist, so let me not transition. And that was coming out of these kinds of communities. So some of my like upset about it is actually that like, I would say that like I met these kind of communities, and they said, oh, you don't have to transition, you're just a fetishist. And I was like, oh, that, number one, that's very comforting to me, even though it's insulting. And number two, I think I would have done something earlier had that not kind of existed. None of this answers your question about language exactly, but it is like related, right? Because when you signed on and like, let's say, so like again, my era is like the message board era, AOL into Facebook, whatever. When you signed on, you met another crossdresser or trans woman or whatever you want to call it, you'd say CD, TV, TS, like, sort of age, sex, location, but it was like your gender identity version of it. And you say, oh, I'm a CD, I'm a crossdresser, oh, I'm a TV, I'm a transvestite, oh, I'm a TS. And if you were, this is my favorite one, if you were a cis woman, you were a GG, which is a genetic girl. But those things also corresponded to sexuality in a sort of like unspoken subtextual way. And so there was divisions along sexuality and all these things within this kind of thing. And actually, a lot of the policing of it, again, was a kind of middle-class policing where it was like, things are different now, where like, now it's like, if you're a trans woman, you're respectable somehow because of whatever the shit has happened. But, and if you're a crossdresser, you're a fetishist. But at the time that this was happening, it was reverse, right? Trans women were like the most kind of like, you're gonna have a terrible life and probably, have horrible things happen to you. And you're, also the stereotype of this that's being enacted is again, white middle classness. but you can have that kind of white middle classness if you're not a trans woman. And all that shit, I just see it in these photos. And it's like, you know, it's within, like, that's the thing. It's like, I'm lecturing you all, sorry. But it's within trans community that this stuff comes out of, you know? And so there's a view of like, sort of like, what do you see if you're looking at this? And it's a celebration of, oh, you get to go have joy on the weekends, versus like, if you've lived it and you've seen it, it just looks really different. And I think, you know, you're agreeing with me and all this kind of things, but
Yes. What she said.
Yeah.
She said.
But, you know, like, to me, like, when it's like, and again, like, there's a kind of polite list. Go, oh, what word do you like to use now? Transgender? Do you like whatever? You know, people kept on asking me why I use the word transsexual in my books. And it's like, it has 4 syllables and the word sex in it. It's a better word. It's not really about, you know, my politics. And that is, to me, like, I think, like, the thing is, like, I don't actually care what somebody's word is. I look at the pictures again and I say, like, are you in pain? And if you're in pain, I don't care what word it is. What are you going to do about it? I'm saying this is a document of pain.
There was a real politics of respectability in the, at least in Transvestia magazine, you know, which was, you know, kind of the, you know, the official guidebook.
Do you know? Do you know what was her name? Who was the name? Who was the transvestite? Oh God, who's transvestite?
Diana Prince.
Yes, Prince.
Yeah.
Virginia Prince.
Virginia Prince. Virginia Prince.
Virginia
yes.
Prince was sort of the Betty Friedan
Yes.
of the transgender world.
Right.
Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. Can you talk? Diana? Can you?
She got it.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about Virginia Prince and sort of her? How you felt about her? How other people you know felt about her?
Well, Virginia Prince kind of had, you'll pardon the expression, but we've gotten into a little loose language here. She sort of had a stick up her ass. I mean, she was just, you know, and she was very much in along the lines of you mustn't have any sexual feeling about this at all. I mean, she was just, you know, she was very proper and prim and proper. And very militant about it, you know. I mean, anybody who even sort of, I mean, even if you sort of did like Kate
Cummings.
Yeah, Kate Cunningham, you know, who did pretty provocative stuff. That was really at the edge for Virginia, I did open this up by saying we are an odd lot, and we are an odd lot. But the idea that I'm so glad you said that that women get turned on by themselves, because that's just absolutely what I agree with that profoundly, and that to say that we should not be turned on by our self-expression, whatever that might be, just seems like counter-human. Anyway, that Torrey is being eloquent, and I'm not quite so eloquent, but anyway.
Very eloquent. Sorry, what was the question?
She doesn't know about Virginia Prince.
The question was, I think I'll just give a little background about Virginia Prince, who was the publisher of Transvestia, for people here who don't know about this. And she was an advocate for the acceptance of cross-dressing as a practice of heterosexual men who basically, you know, she would never call it a fetish, but, you know, a practice. And that she was hoping to have more, basically turn this into something that just, you know, what white men did on the weekends, you know. And in the process of trying to gain this acceptance, she pushed down, any mention of sexuality, any mention of, being turned on by this practice, and also was homophobic in the sense that she would not ally herself with queer men at this time. So she was a controversial figure even in the 60s, and really, pushed her agenda, at the expense of, many other identities that were, emerging at the time. So, it was, that was in a way the public world. I mean, the official world of Casa Susanna. I don't know what happened unofficially.
The socially acceptable world.
Yeah.
It was an attempt to make it all seem nice, and innocent.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, a fraud, quite frankly.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, like, for me, I came to, I kind of got away from this in my own terms, but I came to New York and I met a lot of trans women, and I got involved in this writing scene that was called Topside, that was kind of from like punk roots. So it was like, and it came out of kind of like, I would say an ethos. There was a thing called Camp Trans that was in 2006. That was like, it was a protest against what was called the Michigan Women's Festival at the time, which was a lesbian music festival in Michigan that didn't allow trans women. And there was a protest across the street with trans women at the protest, and actually trans people of all sorts. But what happened is that, like, all those trans people who were at the protest, and they were like living in tents and stuff started hanging out with each other and being like, hey, okay, yeah, we're here to protest, but also, like, I'm in a band. Are you in a band? Do you want to play music? Cool, let's do it. Oh, you write poems? Let me hear your poem. Like, oh, this or that kind of thing. And what came out of it is was like a real sense of culture that wasn't a kind of like weekend culture. It was like let's actually do things together in the real world. Let's start a band. Let's do poetry readings. Let's like go to bars. Let's do all these different things in real life all the time, as one would do. And for me, so Topside was like a bunch of people were like, let's write fiction, and let's like not just write fiction in general for a kind of like cis audience, or like on a presumed cis audience. Let's write stuff for other trans women. And what that did was twofold. I mean, this is like the same thing that like Toni Morrison has talked about, writing explicitly for Black women, that when you write for other trans women, number one, the bar is raised, right? They already know everything that you know in a general way, or like you can't just be like, oh, here's how hormones work or whatever, and everyone's like, oh, amazing. They already know. So you have to say something better than that. And number two, if you're not explaining, you can write at like a full-on run. And you get great stories, 100% story instead of like 7% story, 30% explanation. So for me, that was like the kind of the thing. I was like, not just, oh, I'm trans, but like, what does it mean to be part of a trans culture? And, again, I think that's like a difference between like what I think I experienced with sort of cross-dressing world versus when I experienced the possibilities of like a culture that is rooted in a place, in a time, in a way of making your own culture in the world. It really changed my perspective, and I think it's something that wasn't available if you are doing this part-time. And there are people who, whatever, they want to do it part-time, that's fine. It wasn't, it didn't have the same sort of like revolutionary power that for me, hooking up with the Topside writers did.
I agree with all of that. I think there's another take on it, which is kind of how my life turned out. You might want to learn how to think about computation, or you might want to learn how to write a great trading program, or you might want to study philosophy, or you might want to have conversations about religious belief, or all kinds of things that are a part of the human condition that have nothing to do with whether you're a transgender or transsexual or whatever. And so for me, it was not searching for a community that was a part of the transgender universe. It was searching for a community at all, and but that still would allow me to be expressed in my unusual way, and I think it's important to realize the kind of normality of it that is also possible, and certainly has been pretty much true for me in my life. The untrue thing about it is I have to acknowledge is the relationship I have with my spouse, Carol, which is magical and transforming and sexual.
Do I need to wrap this up, or is it, do I a few more minutes? One more minute? Okay.
We've only just begun.
I know. Is there room for more complexity in today? I mean,
I think there's a lot of hostility right now.
yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, the hostility doesn't have to do just with transgenderism, although it's gotten focused quite a bit on that. And I don't know how we're going to make peace with one another. I think that is a big problem, and I hope we keep talking and keep being compassionate with one another.
Having ragged on this for now 15 minutes, I want to say actually that there's something that I do actually miss about this, and I think that there's something that you don't find in this era, which is number one, when I did go to sort of these sorts of things when I was in my 20s or early 20s, I met people from like all walks of life. That there's a way in which like the space that like this was kind of like a slice of trans version of like a gay bar, like the old gay bar where you could walk in and you had people from like all sorts of walks of lives who all went there, and that you wouldn't end up, and that you'd meet people who were outside of your world. You'd meet, like I remember, being like cross-dressed, and I was like, there was a UPS guy, right? And he was like probably 50 years old, and I was 21. And I'm sitting here like talking to a UPS guy, like, oh yeah, what's your route? Like, that's not a question I asked any of my friends at college, And so I was meeting people totally outside of my world. And on top of that, there were spaces that that were created for this. That stuff is gone. I think that like there is a much more open kind of trans culture now. You can be trans, but it has also, in becoming more kind of open, segregated along the exact same lines that the rest of society is segregated. So I can be like, a white middle class, creative in terms of like my profession, trans woman, and I don't meet UPS drivers to hang out with.
Exactly.
In the same way as I did before. There are not the way that, and this is not the fault of any sort of queer culture, but the idea that a bunch of trans people could now buy a house upstate in New York and hang out on the weekends and invite anybody who wants to come, that's like a fantasy. The closest thing to it was a doll invasion in Fire Island just like a couple weeks ago, right? And what do you get? 2 days once a year, you know, that you can have a culture as opposed to every weekend whenever you want. So there's a way in which like there's a kind of there's a nostalgia, I think, that's like very predictable and makes sense for a time in which you could have the the trans equivalent of a gay bar. You could open up spaces that you didn't. I mean, that cross-dressing store that I went to when I was like 20, that was in Detransition, baby. That was like in a strip mall somewhere next to like a vacuum cleaner store. It was very romantic. But the idea, and there was like, I was the only customer in there the whole time, I think. And it was like the idea that you could have your own store in a strip mall for cross-dressers and have one customer all day and stay in business, you know, I want to go back to that, you know? And so there's an appeal, I think, to this, and there's a way in which there was a kind of beauty and you know, I have my own feelings about it, which I've expressed probably too much tonight, but I just want to end and say that like, there's also a reason why like seeing it, I have a kind of nostalgia, and I think it's definitely like worth remembering the kind of possibilities that those eras provided. So yeah, I'll end on that. For myself, I'll end on that note.
Thank you so much. So if you have not read Stag Dance yet, you must read it. It's an incredibly, deeply weird book in the best way. I mean, it's you know, these stories just get under your skin in a way that is so powerful.
You never heard of burlap?
Yeah. And I mean, just, you know, and the you know, she's playing with genre, you know, in this, you know, very innovative ways. And Torrey will be signing her book outside of the room, so this will give you an opportunity to get really. You've got to read it. It's the best book I've read this year.
I'll take that.
And okay, and thank you also to Diana for being here, for sharing your insight and your life story with us. I also encourage you to go upstairs and see the exhibition, Casa Susanna, which is right on the second floor. If you go up these elevators or staircase, it's right there at this end of the museum. And the museum will be open until 9 o'clock, which gives you plenty of time to buy a book, get it signed, and then go upstairs and see the exhibition. So thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. That was fabulous.
That was amazing. It was okay. No, it was fine. It was fine.